Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Gatewood and I am the Communications and Marketing Director at CFRE International. And today I am very pleased that we have with us today Molly Helmstetter, a CFRE, who originally certified in December of 2012. And so today we are recording this in December of 2022. Molly is celebrating her 10-year anniversary as a CFRE. So thank you so much for being with us today, Molly.
Oh, it's fantastic to be here and to be able to share a little bit of my experience and my journey as becoming a CFRE.
Excellent. Yes, and we're very fortunate that we have somebody with a decade of experience that is able to speak to a lot of the questions that are on the minds of folks that are considering pursuing their CFRE. So my first question is for you. 10 years ago, can you talk a little bit about what made you decide to become a CFRE and if it was a quick decision or something that you contemplated for a while?
Sure. So, you hear those initial CFRE and maybe, you're not quite sure what it was. And I was kind of like that. I was a fundraiser for many years and was in an environment where those initials kind of popped up and I started to learn a little bit more about exactly what a CFRE is. And it really intrigued me, so I started to do a little bit of research, ask around, noticed some of my, fundraising friends who had those initials and asked them about what it is and what it meant to them. And that really helped me with launching into the decision to be able to consider that as something I wanted to do for my professional journey.
Excellent. And once you decided to get started, how long did it take you to complete the application?
So I know that there's several different parts, and it's been 10 years since I completed my application. But what I remember was being advised, and I will, share that as I was kind of doing that exploratory work about, what is the CFRE and is it for me, I was mentored, by some people in the fundraising community who told me more about it, and they really, a couple handful of people who would help me through the process, and they kind of helped me get the pieces together for the application. And so, the first part of the application was really kind of digging back a little bit into my history and recent years from that point in time and seeing if I had all the requirements, together. So that took a little bit of time, honestly, because I knew it focused me in that process of what did I still need to do or get or add to my kind of initial application. So again, it's been about 10 years, but I think the actual application, the first step of the application process was probably a good, 3 to 6 months, I'm going to say, as far as gathering materials, making sure that I was able to get the rest of my either education or service together so that I could have a complete application to submit.
Very good. That's always good to know. People are very curious about how long it takes. And some people, I've heard it's taken them 2 years to complete it. And I've heard some people say they did it on a weekend. There's really no right or wrong, but it's great to have the viewpoint of how long it took you with those 3 to 6 months. Now, when you became a CFRE, did your employer support any part of the cost of the certification? So either the certification fees or study materials, anything like that?
I have been incredibly blessed. I'm actually still with the same employer as I was 10 years ago. And this was something that was actually encouraged when I was hired for this position that I'm in now as Director of Development. And so, very supportive in the entire process. Interestingly, what I was advised by one of my mentors was to suggest to my employer that I would actually pay for the exam.
Mhm.
And if I did not pass, then that would be kind of my cost that I would
Mhm.
eat. But if I passed, that I would be reimbursed. And so that was actually what I proposed to my employer, who was very agreeable to that. So that was like that financial piece. Most of the study materials, the other things that really helped me along the journey for preparing for taking the exam were at my own cost. They
Mhm.
weren't very expensive though. I mean, I can tell you, and I know you'll probably get into this later, but like I just created my own flashcards based upon some reading material that I, knew would be important for being able to be up to date on the different subject matters. So I kind of like, winged it as far as those resources go. I didn't buy a lot of additional pieces. So I felt very comfortable, investing in myself with those type of tools and resources.
And that's excellent to hear that your employer was open to being involved with a cost like that. And I think the avenue that you took where you paid up front is excellent because it does take out any concern that the employer might have. But I also think that probably for a lot of people, it makes them extra motivated to study because they want to, their employer knows they're going for this. We have a lot of people that go for the CFRE and they don't tell a soul until they've actually passed. But, I think when you do discuss it with your employer, and they want to see you succeed and you want to succeed twice as much because you know that they're looking out for your success as well.
Most definitely. And I would just say too, I really felt very, I felt a lot of weight. And that I felt that, that was one of my concerns that I talked with my mentors was, gosh, what if, they pay for it and then I don't pass? I feel
Yeah,
guilty. And, that was like an extra weight. So I really appreciated that advice that I received. And that's what I, share along the way as well, is that in addition to maybe some of that stress that you might be feeling about taking an exam, of this caliber and, maybe not passing it on the first go around, it at least took that weight off, that piece of the weight
yeah.
off that I didn't have to worry about. Okay, now I've got that as well on me, so it was nice to kind of have that support and take that burden off me through the process.
Very good, very good. And so when it came to the exam, about how long did you study? And then can you tell us a little bit about how you prepared?
Yeah, so I have not been in any type of educational environment in a long time, and I knew my history back then. I'm not a very good test taker, so
Hmm.
that was really high on my kind of list of, oh, what's going to happen on the day of the exam. So I wanted to make sure I was as prepared as possible for this exam. I wasn't just taking it lightly. It wasn't just, okay, submitted the application and good to go. After I submitted the application, which I believe was I think it was in May or June. It may have been a little bit later than that. Again, a long time ago, but I was very intentional about giving myself a good amount of time in creating a study schedule for
Hmm.
myself because I knew that's what I needed. So after I submitted the application and I knew I had what my window was to take the exam by, I really planned out my study time. I was very intentional. I had two young kids at the time who were in, high school, middle school, wherever they were at the moment, and I wanted to set an example for them as well that I was
Yeah.
studying for the exam much like they do. So I really planned it out. I had a calendar, and after work, in the evenings, I would set aside time. Again, it wasn't every night. I wasn't like filling all my extra time with studying, but I was very intentional about saying that yes, every week I needed to do something to either read, use the flashcards that I prepared, talk to people, do the sample tests, the exams that were online at the time, whatever I could do. I really was intentional about scheduling that time so that I would be as prepared as I possibly could for exam day.
And that's really smart because I always say the people who say, well, I'll study with whatever free time I have this week, you don't set yourself up for success that way. You need to carve that time out up front and hold yourself to it.
Yeah, it was great being accountable because I was actually accountable to a lot, primarily to my kids. I kind of would show them and say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm studying too for something pretty big, just like you do. You might have a history test going on. Well, I've got this special test. And they were supportive too. They'd be like, Mom, did you study this week? Did you do that? Which kind of surprised me, but it was fun. It was great to be able to, have that accountability for my kids. Why not?
Excellent, excellent. And so you took the exam in person at a test center because 10 years ago that was the only option that we offered. Now we do offer it from the comfort of your home or office if you are so inclined. And so When you went to the testing center, which honestly at CFRE International, that's what we recommend. There's some data that shows you're more likely to pass if you go to an in-person test center because it's a distraction-free test center and your home is not. But can you talk about what that experience was like when you went to that in-person test center?
Yeah, I remember it vividly
Hmm.
because I was, I was nervous, but I actually took off from work that day. I thought, all right, I really need, even though I didn't need the whole work day to take the test, I really wanted to again be relaxed, be confident, and I was going into it, but still, once, no matter how much you study or how confident you are. The subject matter as best as possible. You've gotten to that point now it's game time. And so, pulling into the parking lot, it was a December day. It's a little chilly here where am in South Central Pennsylvania, and walking in and going through all the technicalities of put all your things in the locker and you walk. Let's check everything. So sitting down in kind of the little cubicle and kind of being in that environment. And I agree, it was very nice to have kind of that distraction free setting, having some headphones on that kind of was more just like noise cancelers, if you will, and
Hmm.
sitting in front of the screen, taking the test. I remember just, trying to put myself at ease, doing some breathing and praying,
Hmm.
and really just being as prepared as possible. But it was a really intense process. I know it's said oftentimes, with these type of tests that, okay, there's four choices and usually you can rule out two that seem like, oh, that's probably not the answer. And I remember that being the case in most of them, but there were
Hmm.
definitely questions that I remember being like, let me think about that, but not overthink it, and
Hmm.
be able to get to that, end result. So I took my time. I did kind of double check myself a little bit. I know I didn't use the full allotment of time, but it was close. I didn't rush myself. I tried not to overthink since that's what I was advised. And yeah, but I got through it. It was a comfortable experience. But yeah, certainly I had butterflies. I think most of us do when you're taking something like this.
Yeah, I think it would probably be strange if you didn't have butterflies.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's quite normal, yeah. And how did you feel when you found out that you passed the CFRE exam?
Well, if I could have stood up and like done a dance, I would have, but I couldn't. I remember I got to the end and, I just, again, I just got to close my eyes and I was like, all right, said a little prayer. All right, here's where I am. I've done the best I can. And, I knew I was going to get some sort of instant kind of estimate of whether or not I had passed. And so I just kind of took a deep breath. And when it flashed up that, I had passed, yeah, I was it just a sigh of relief and excitement. I was
Mhm.
really super excited, just to be like, wow, all this time and effort and the support from my friends and family and, fundraising friends specifically who were encouraging me along the journey. It just was really great, and certainly, left the center, got my phone back and, called some
Mhm.
people and texted people and was like, hey, I passed, especially, including my employer to be like, all right, because they all had my back. They knew what I was doing that day, and it was really really great feeling for sure.
It sounds like a walking on air kind of feeling.
Yeah, I can't remember what my celebration dinner was, but I think I either got carry out or went out. I don't know, but I was super excited. My kids too. I mean, obviously, I know I called my kids or saw them later that night, but it was a big deal. Really happy just to celebrate with everybody.
That's great. That's great. Was there anything at all about the CFRE experience then, or say through recertifying, any part of it that surprised you?
I think back to just kind of going through the process at the very beginning. I think what surprised me was how much I learned about what I needed to spend more time learning about. Like
Mhm.
there were those
Mhm.
areas, certainly as I was taking the practice tests and reading, creating my flashcards. I knew that there was like a stack of some of those cards that I was like, all right, these are kind of my problem
Yeah.
cards, my problem areas. So it surprised me in that I learned a lot more, not just, I wasn't just applying what I have already learned and worked through with my fundraising experience, but I was surprised that I was learning more about myself as a professional fundraiser and how taking that knowledge would elevate myself in this profession. Being able to certainly know that those subject topics for taking the exam, but then being able to build upon that and say, you know what, I really do need to invest a little bit more of my time into learning about this specific area. So I think that's what surprised me most of all through the process.
Very good. And our final question is, what is your advice for other people who are contemplating earning their CFRE? We have a lot of people that, they kind of sit on the fence with it for a while. They talk to some people, they start their application, they don't log in for 6 months, and they're kind of like, just kind of can't get the ball rolling. What would be your advice to someone perhaps in that situation?
Yeah, I think if you're really serious about the process, about wanting to go through with the process, I think identifying somebody in your local community who is a CFRE and reaching out to them to kind of be that accountability partner, if you will.
Hmm.
It certainly could be a mentor, but it could also be someone that you could just say, hey, I am really interested in this. I know you've done it. I'm looking for someone that maybe I could check in with, every month. Come up with a simple schedule so that you do not lose track of it being on your list of things to do. Because
Right.
it's so easy to let it get lost. For me, even though my employer has always been and still is super supportive of me being a CFRE, um, you know, having somebody and having a plan in place is so important to keep yourself motivated. And I think that's just one of the biggest things that I would suggest is latch on, find somebody who can be that accountability partner or just a support person. It's just important because if you don't carve time out, you could just keep on, like you said, it'll just sit in there for 6 months and you don't do anything with it. And again, I think that's a reality. We're all pulled in different directions, but if you're able to kind of put that on your schedule, even if it's just like a recurring calendar thing, you pop on your own,
Right.
whatever calendar app you use, just to say, hey, just check in, log in. Where am I at? What am I missing? How am I doing? Even that would be worth it. And for me, a lot of it is done after hours. Just because my work it has priority. So most of my CFRE journey, as with all my other volunteer experience, is really done kind of after my work hours. So I think just that piece would be what I would suggest is finding somebody that you can, connect with, have them tell them. So you're like, listen, this is my goal. I would love to be able to sit by in whatever the year is, month, whatever, and try and come up with a schedule to be like, hey, can we check in every month, every quarter, whatever works for you? And it's
Hmm.
more so it's a motivation and just that, oh yeah, I got that call with her next week or next week with him. I better make sure I kind of get in and get my act together before I have that call. So I have something to share that, yes, I am serious about this process.
That's very, very sage advice. And I think it's great you're recommending to people to find a CFRE locally that they can connect with. For people who don't maybe have a CFRE in their area, we do have an ambassador program through CFRE, and you can email me at share. And I always have to say share, SHARE, at CFRE.org. Somebody once thought I meant share like the singer. But and we can connect you with somebody who can help with that, just like Molly said, because it is really important that you have people to check in with, but also it can feel kind of lonely to go through a process like this on your own, and it's awesome to have a person that can give you perspective that's successfully gone through and completed their CFRE. Well, thank you so much, Molly, for sharing your advice today and your CFRE journey. But more so, and above all of that, is happy 10-year anniversary on being a CFRE and holding it for a decade. That, in and of itself, is wonderful and shows your great commitment to confidence, ethics, and professionalism in fundraising.
Thanks, Ashley. It's been a great joy to share my journey and appreciate all that CFRE has brought into my professional development. It's meant the world to me, and I'm just so appreciative for the platform and for this organization that supports professional and ethical fundraising.
Excellent. Thank you.